I guess we could talk about the other matchup, actually. We can obviously, there's in theory, no one knows yet who plays in the lower bracket, right? Because obviously Golden Guardians, Flyquest wait in the lower bracket. What about, since we only talked about him as a mid laner, what about some thoughts on Flyquest, Kira? Obviously the team that Takui does play for.
I actually think this was really, really weird. I actually think this team's like a couple of changes from actually becoming kind of serious. Mm-hmm. Joso Dodo's gotten a lot better from where I originally thought he was going to be, and he was kind of giving big props to like Afromu. But this, I think, unfortunately, just because of the way the bracket is they're just going to become like a footnote team that like a team drops down into them, just beats them. They maybe go 3-1, 3-0, but I think Takui and Joso Dodo can expose problems in the, what do you call it, from either TL or EG. They can basically expose like a mid matchup. You know, they can isolate it, you know, get on top of it, like get leads onto that, and that's like one of the big props of the team. I don't think that will result in them winning anything, unfortunately, but that's like probably their biggest upside of what they have over the other playoff teams, is that Joso Dodo and Takui actually play for each other's advantages quite consistently, and Joso Dodo and Afromu actually have support jungle synergy. Like, they do actually play as like a pairing. Like, for example, EG's jungler and support are still to actually meet each other, I believe. I don't think I've ever actually seen them like show up together.
Yep. And Johnson and Afromu actually aren't that bad by LCS standards. Like, they're having a pretty decent split. The one thing about how Flyquest plays, which is actually kind of smart, is how everybody knows Kumo is probably the worst top laner in the LCS. If not, like, there's Kumo and Fake God. Those are the worst players. And what they're doing with Kumo in some of their better wins is that they are having Kumo be on positions to where, all right, your only goal is to just not lose. And if they're in a position like that, then if they play around that well, then they can potentially like be in a much better spot. It's kind of a similar situation that I would contrast with like C9 and Fudge, is that they should be not playing the kind of picks that Fudge is playing in the mid lane. Would be as if you had all of Bwipo style champions. Like, you had the Lucian top from Kumo, and that just doesn't make any sense at all. So I think if you stick Kumo on like a Gragas, on a Malphite, on like an Orin, on all of these like super tanks who can just lose gracefully, then like I think that if Kumo faces EG, they might even be able to beat EG and get sort of like top 4. But that's, I think, the ceiling for this team with Kumo.
Yeah, I'm on that actually. There is actually a world in which they could beat EG, depending on EG's like form somewhat into TL. Like, cause I was just thinking about that in my head about Takui's like champion pool. He's like got all the picks.
He's got some really good like sort of pocket ones, right? Like, he plays the Vega, he plays the Vex. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And he's actual like understanding. He'll be able to like cripple some of like the draft greed that like certain teams sometimes try and get away with. As long as he stays away from that Ahri, I think. And
that's the trap pick, isn't it?
Yeah, Ahri's the trap pick. Basically, unless you're like one of the gods of the world and you want to like try and play the game at an 11 out of 10 hard mode for some strange and unknown reason, you're the only people that should be picking Ahri. Again, they're kind of in the same wheelhouse as 100 Thieves. If I'm Flyquest or 100 Thieves, I'm 100% throwing some of my scrim time at understanding Twisted Fate, because, you know, if Takui, you get to choose which side of the map you play to at all times with Twisted Fate, and you can choose to just basically, when you're hiding Kumo under the bed, you can just choose to repeat attack bot lane, and it can just become very, 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 very hard for teams to get out under that, a very oppressive nature of the champ. And it's also very good in NA because it's an ADC killer, because you're always a stun card away from just randomly winning the game because someone doesn't cleanse or something. It is one of those like really nice high variance champions sometimes, and those can sometimes be very effective in NA. So there's a lot of props for him, to be honest, to be able to kind of... He's got a chance of hard carrying his team in the playoffs, put it that way.
Right. One thing that was interesting was, like you set it up earlier, that obviously there's the patch change, but it's not just a patch change. People have barely had any time on it, including if there's only like 2 days between the first match. They barely had any time to scrim even. It's not even like they can't, like they just haven't played matches. They haven't even been able probably to scrim much on this patch. So you pointed out like Golden Guardians maybe as an example of a team where just from the Rengar pick alone, that could win you a game. That could shift the draft strategy, obviously. If we apply some of these thoughts about the upcoming patch, what would be some other potential, like, which teams get a nerf or a buff in your opinion? Who are you looking at and seeing as, like, this might weaken this team, might make this team stronger? Who are we going with?
I mean, Whippo, aside from the fact that they're already, consensus likely to win, Whippo is a Rengar top player. So Rengar becoming really strong would be really good. I would have to sort of, think about it a little bit harder to see how much... Because Hecarim being out of the meta is going to be a very drastic thing. There's just the question of, I don't really know how much that would actually affect one team or another. But having Jax in the meta over Tryndamere is going to favor more experienced top laners, because Jax hasn't been in the meta for a while, so people who have been playing for 3+ seasons back when the last time he was in the meta are going to have a much better time because they have hundreds and hundreds of games on him.
Want to see more cool, funny, interesting clips based on topics from my content? Well, subscribe to this channel then, or, be a pleb and don't.